Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I will be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome my guest, Sumeet Jena. Welcome, Sumeet. How are you today?
I'm good, Mr. Proper. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to share your experiences. It's very much appreciated.
Of course. So I left Don Estridge in 2016, so the spring of 2016, and then I went to Atlantic Community High School for the IB program for 4 years. Graduated in 2020, and now am a sophomore at the University of Florida studying computer engineering and sports journalism.
Did your high school preparation lead you towards the major choice? Like, were you already there? Like, when you applied, did you say, these are the things I want to do? Or did that change?
Well, you apply around your senior year, like November, December-ish.
The sports journalism is something for yourself, or is that actually a career path that you would like to possibly pursue?
It's definitely both. I would like to pursue that, but I know it's a very difficult industry to get your foot in the door. It's kind of like a, who knows who type thing.
Sure.
But, like, that's why I have the computer engineering as well, because that's also something I'm passionate about, and it's a lot safer of a profession. So, like, I have kind of that to fall back on if I don't, if it doesn't work out in the sports media type thing.
Definitely.
So, I have both.
That's really good, because it's always good to have a fallback. How did you see things in 8th grade?
I'd say the beginning of 8th grade, I thought I knew everything. Like, I felt like, I can't really put it into words, but I just remember going into class, like, saying, I don't need this. Like,
Yes.
I just had that feeling. I'm sure you remember.
The stuff that you, quote unquote, got away with in 7th grade, did that work in 8th grade?
It worked here and there, but not nearly to the extent as to which I thought I would get away with.
Right.
Yeah, like sometimes I would, come to class like a minute late and you wouldn't say anything, right? But in 7th grade, I used to just skip class for like 10 minutes at a time, and I don't think anybody would notice.
Wow.
And I used to just get away with it all the time. And then I remember going to 8th grade and I was like, yeah, this is not gonna like cut it anymore.
This isn't gonna work. Yeah, you got hip to the jive, as they would say back in the day, where you understood what was going on. But again, because of your high intellect, I think that easily came through and you figured out the system. The problem is, by the time you got to 8th grade, it was a brand new system and you couldn't really figure it out. You were just kind of like, well, wait a second, this worked last year, but it's not working now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you had to step it up. And obviously more expectations were upon you, because now you realized, oh no, I have to do what I need to do. Otherwise, I might not get into the Atlantic IB program. I might not be able to go to the University of Florida and study engineering and do what I want to do. So that's really interesting that you did. Now, in your opinion, I know you can't speak for every kid, but in your opinion, maybe you could throw out a percentage. What percentage do you think kids were like you that did the same things, but then figured it out?
I would think it's less than 10 to 5%. I don't think the number is that high, because one, the kids who were smart already didn't goof around like I did. Like,
really?
And most of the studious kids were not also class clowns like I was.
True.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, probably. But you were a fun class clown. You see, that's what kids don't seem to understand. That if you're a fun class clown like yourself, it's not bothersome to me.
Yeah, I remember you telling me, like, you weren't bothered by my presence. You were fine with it.
Because you see, Sumeet, you were the type of class clown that this teacher liked. You see, this is the problem, that kids at that age in the 8th grade realm, 13, 14, they don't understand, well, Mr. Proper likes and puts up with my antics. How come Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so doesn't?
Yeah.
It's all
That's a big thing I learned in high school was you can get away with certain things in certain classrooms, but some teachers just won't tolerate it, and you need to be a different person in that class.
And that, I think, is a very tough lesson for many students.
Yes, very, very tough.
To learn that they don't understand that your behavior in certain classes is going to dictate how you're being treated, good, bad, or other. So for you personally, I just thought you were hysterical. You always had something funny to say.
Yeah.
You always had like these off the wall stories and comments. But the thing was, though, you placated to the things that I liked. Like you realized, because again, let's just go back to the fact that you're a really smart kid and you realized Mr. Proper likes sports.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can get him to talk about sports. So what was on last night? Or did you watch the basketball game or the Super Bowl or the NHL finals? And you just wanted to talk about things that you knew I was interested in.
Yeah.
Whereas other people, they don't understand that they're doing the exact same thing that you tried to do successfully, but they're doing it in a way that it's only what's important to them, and that's what they don't understand. You maybe inherently understood or just realized, well, hey, Mr. Proper responds positively when I talk about sports, so let's go there, or I joke about this or that. And I don't think everyone has it as well as you did, because you realized this is the lane I need to be in.
Yeah.
To get him to do what I want him to do.
I remember in Miss Adamo's class, I did crack jokes here and there, but not nearly as much as your class. But I remember when I tried to be funny, it was completely different, like for the topics. Like I never talked about sports in her class. I was talking about like I remember we read The Outsiders. I would make a joke that referenced that, and then she would laugh, and she'd be okay with it.
Right.
But
so
I wouldn't make a joke I knew she wasn't interested in.
Right, because you were smart enough to realize you were placating to what she liked, just like me with sports. You realized, okay, I threw out a sports joke and it was like crickets, chirp, 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 chirp. And Pony Boy, right?
Yeah,
I made a joke about Pony Boy, and all of a sudden it was the uproarious laughter, But that's it. Knowing your audience, you're either there for complete shock value, which doesn't work all the time, or is offensive, or you're trying to placate to the audience that you know. And that's it. You realize that in this English class, English is what I'm going to make the joke about.
Yeah.
Whereas in social studies, I can make a joke about anything. And as long as this guy thinks it's funny, he's going to laugh.
It's fun.
So
I think that's a pretty big piece of advice I'd give, is to know the surrounding you're in and don't be afraid to adapt yourself to that surrounding.
That is
to just make yourself succeed.
So basically, you're telling the kids that they should be a chameleon.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You don't have to, stick to yourself, keep your identity, but don't be afraid to, change yourself temporarily to, better put yourself in a position to succeed in certain
the situation
environments. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. So that's really helpful advice. And it's interesting. Did you understand that at the time, or is this just something that right now it's like cathartic and we're talking about it and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I see what I did there?
I think it's more the I remember like being really tired at the end of the day, but I was like, okay, I have Mr. Proper's class at the end. And I always looked forward to coming to class. And I know my classmates did too, like Tony and Natalie and like Michael, like we all loved coming to your class. And I always remember thinking like, I don't want to do anything that will make me leave the class, so I can't have fun anymore.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That is an unbelievable compliment. And it's nice to know that you were thinking that back because that's the experience that I want kids to have, that they can come to class, we can have a good time. But the problem is, like you succinctly said, there are many students that just don't understand, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah, you have to know your point.
Right. You know your limit and know when you've overstepped it, because ultimately I'm the teacher, I'm in charge. I'll give you your moment. Thoughts for a young man to be thinking like,
I like this class so much. And on top of that, it's sixth period. I mean, what a drag. It's like, I mean, thank goodness you didn't have math sixth period.
Oh my God.
Miss Joyner is my Batman. I am like her Robin. She has cleaned up and taken care of so many of my, the only word I could come up with is problems, but you weren't really a problem. It was just the issue at the moment. Like problem sounds like, oh, you're this horrible child who's always in trouble. That's not what it was. It was just the issue at the moment. And,
I do, sorry to interrupt, but I do remember sitting, like I would, sit like normally in the seats, right? But I'd always get sent up to that desk near the door, at least like once a week.
The sit by myself seat.
Yeah, I'd get sent there at least once a week. But I mean, I still had fun in class. I still learned.
Well, but the thing is, though, you were mature enough to realize you earned that. That wasn't just condemnation by Mr. Proper.
Oh yeah.
I just a bad kid, and he's going to sit there forever. But there's some kids that got put there who didn't realize that this is me telling you, alter your behavior, change what you're doing. It's not acceptable, and they refuse to do it. And then, of course, it's turned around on, oh, why is Mr. Proper so mean? Your behavior dictates how you're treated, and they don't seem to understand that. But again, it's the age. I know I've been doing this age.
I don't even want to act like I was so mature at that age. Like I was really immature as well, and I was obnoxious at times too. But there was just certain moments where I knew, like, okay, I have to be more mature at this moment, right?
For sure. Well, but again, you're in college now, and you can go back in retrospect and look at 8th grade Sumeet and go, wow, if I were to try that today in my engineering classes,
oh my God,
I'd be booted out and politely asked not to return.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's what growing up is all about. And that's why it's important to explain, all right, I know what it was like when I was 13, 14. And wow, that wasn't really the greatest choice. But what did you know? 13 and 14, that was it. But now you have a better understanding. You made it through high school. You're into college. You're moving in a direction of this is what I want to do.
Because I remember getting an iPhone in 7th grade. Like that was my first phone. Right. But I had you in 8th grade. Exactly. So I still had it was an iPhone like 6 or 7 or whatever it was. So I still had like technology, but I don't remember like having it even in my desk. It was always in my bag. Like I only pulled it out for music. You're saying, the younger generation, I mean, it's still my generation, but just, 5-6 years difference. And they're,
but there's a huge difference between that 5 and 6 years.
Yeah, it's really weird to me.
So that's what's so interesting that I try to explain and they don't understand it. Now, do you feel like that there in 15, 16, there just weren't as many apps, or there weren't as many games, or there just wasn't as many interesting things, like the Bleacher Report wasn't even there yet. So like a lot of the things that even just you and I could talk about sports wise didn't exist. So do you feel that maybe that's why it wasn't such an integral part of your life?
I mean, actually, I remember using Bleacher Report at that time. So it was definitely there. Yeah. But stuff like The Athletic and stuff, that wasn't even a company yet. Like that was later. Yeah. But I do remember Snapchat was very big when I was in 8th grade.
I think everything has its day with the kids, and then the adults take it over and ruin it, because the kids find it first. Like we were talking about Discord earlier. I had a student this year show it to me, and I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. And she was like, and you can have your own server, and you can do this, and you can do that. And I'm like, I don't mean to be old and mean, but isn't that just like a giant chat room? And they're like,
that's what it is.
But they refuse. You can admit that as a college kid.
Because I've experienced both. Like I remember being in chat rooms at one point.
So you can totally make the connection.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Like, it totally is. But the kids refuse to say it because it shows how old their thing really is, even though it's new. Like, I even said this in your class because I say it every year. There's no such thing as something that's like really new. It's just an expansion of something else. Like, when did you feel like you really were like, I like learning? Like, I really enjoy school, or maybe it was a subject or a teacher. Is there like a moment in your life that you could say, you know what, the light bulb just went on and oh my gosh, I really enjoy this?
It's actually kind of interesting because I've had points where I was really interested in learning and then not interested, and then now I'm back to interested. So in elementary school, my dad used to take me to the local library like once a week, right? Every Saturday we'd go. And I would read probably a book a day in elementary school, like genuine, like at least a book a day.
That's impressive.
Every day for like 4 years, from second to fifth grade. And I really loved going to school and learning and, reading new books, learning about science, math, whatever. Like my dad lived in like a small village, so they didn't have a library or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So when my dad came here, he obviously took so I have 3 siblings. We would all go to the library. But as we got older, I was the only one who wanted to keep going. So they act like he didn't force them to go. My 2 sisters and my brother.
Right.
They stopped going at like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. But I, kept going because I liked reading. So I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing, but he definitely gave me the freedom. Like I could have stopped anytime I wanted, but
That's awesome.
I liked reading. So I kept doing it.
That's a great story. So this was just something that he did himself because of his upbringing and not having.
Yeah, he didn't have the option to go to the library. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's giving us the option. If you want to go, go. If you don't have to go.
Everyone has their library, but that's amazing that he took you and your sisters and your brother basically said, "Meh, I don't want to do this anymore." And I'm sure they didn't wind up the miscreants of the family because they stopped going to the library. But that's amazing. So was there a teacher that also did that for you? Is there someone that?
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I was very interested in learning in 6th grade. Sorry, it's kindergarten to 5th grade, right? So I entered middle school and I had Miss Newman for 6th grade English. I know she doesn't work there anymore, but I remember Miss Newman telling me something, and I still remember it today. She said, and she only pointed out the boys, and it's honestly very true. I don't think this applies to girls. She said in 6th grade, all the boys come in, and they're all relatively like innocent, nice kids, right? Because they're little kids, and there's 8th graders who've already hit puberty, right? It's you don't want to be like
so. What was it about Miss Newman that gave you that aha connection?
So she said, I remember this. She said when the boys leave 7th grade and they go to 8th grade and high school and all that, she said about half of them will realize the mistake they made and go back to their 6th grade self, sort of like nice, mature, right? And half of them won't. Half of them will just continue on that
path.
Yeah, that path. And I remember when I was about to finish 8th grade, like I'd say March-ish, February, if I can remember correctly. Mm-hmm. I remember that thing she said, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm going towards the second path. Like,
yeah,
I'm not changing. So I just, that hit me like a light bulb. Like, okay, I need to, consciously like change how I'm behaving.
That's
so I remember
amazing.
That summer, like my demeanor completely changed. Like, I was still the same kid, but I was so much more mature in those 3 months before high school. And then when I got to high school, like it was probably 2 different people. Like if you had seen me in high school when I came back from, like if I had visited that year, you would have been so surprised about.
I wouldn't have. But you see, what you fail to understand is for the kids that come back that want to say hello and they want to show how they've changed and what they've done, it's not surprising at all. Because,
really?
Because you want to show me, maybe it's subconscious.
Yeah.
You want to show me that I've grown up. I'm not that same little twerp that was in your class making silly jokes and, pushing the limits and the boundaries. Yes, yeah. I wasn't the worst one by far, but I pushed it as far as I could go. And also, again, though, I think a lot of it also may have to do with your culture. Because let's face it, Sumeet, if I called your dad and said your son is being the wisecracking, pain in the behind kid in my class, what would have happened?
Oh, man, I don't think I would have came back to school for like a week.
Probably not. So, and again, but that's also the experiences that I had to learn as a teacher, that there are certain cultures that the teacher is almost like an extension of the family or a parent. And if you as the teacher call up and say, hey, your kid is really misbehaving and taking time away from the other kids and distracting and becoming a learning problem, that's the worst thing you could ever say.
Yeah.
So I knew that as well. Plus I knew you were such a smart kid that if I could give you your 5 minutes of soapbox time,
I would pay attention.
Yes. And I would have you for the other 50 minutes rather than fighting you for 55, go ahead. Talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. I don't care. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, I joined in because I liked what you had to say. So that's the difference. But again, it was your maturation of your maturity. It was your intellect. It was, you were the I guess the perfect storm, as it were. You would push the envelope, but realized, okay, I went too far, or this is as far as I should go, and that's it. Or even if I had to say, okay, Sumeet, that's enough, you went, all right, and you throw your hands up and you'd be like, okay, I got my, hey, the old man gave me my 5 minutes. What can I complain
Yeah,
about?
you just, I would get that look with your eyes, and I'd be like, okay, this is it. Like that was my point. I can't go any farther.
Right, exactly. If we go further, we're going to have to turn this into something.
Yeah,
And-
exactly.
But that's the thing that I appreciated about you so much as a kid, is that you got it. Whatever that it is, you got it. You realized from a look, from even if it was a verbal warning, you went, oh, well, the last thing I want to do is get a referral, or I don't even want to get a CBI. I get it. Okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
I went to go see Miss Joyner. I don't want to do that again. And
Yeah.
you get it. And that was what was so important. And I was so glad that you were able to do that. So if you could turn back time and tell your 8th grade self some advice, what would you tell them?
I'd say outside the classroom, I'd tell them to take more risks and try and challenge yourself more, experience new things. Don't try and just, it's okay if you're not comfortable doing a lot of things, but don't be afraid to, go outside the box and do some things that you wouldn't normally do. Like, I remember I wouldn't go to, like, I've never been like a party type guy, and there would always be parties 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
Sure.
And I just wouldn't go. Like, that wasn't something I wanted to do.
Wasn't
And-
your scene, man.
Yeah. And now with COVID, right?
Yeah.
So COVID canceled my prom and graduation, right?
Oh, no
So
way.
I didn't get to walk. Like, we didn't even, the diploma got sent in the mail, right?
Oh, that's horrible.
And prom, like, I just
Didn't
didn't
happen.
go. So I was thinking, like, man, all those parties I missed out because I was thinking, oh, I'll just go to prom. It'll be fine. But
And
I didn't
never
go to
happened.
prom. So I didn't get that experience. I didn't go to, all those parties in high school. So, like, I wish I had done that. And like with my, this is kind of an odd one, but I was like one of the latest people to get my driver's license, like in my class.
Oh, I knew a couple of people like that when I grew up. No, it's not.
Yeah, I got it super late. Like, I was almost 18. I might have already been 18, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. So, like, because I didn't want to go anywhere. I just stayed home. But then as soon as I got my license, I was like, man, I should have gotten it earlier. I could have gone out with friends. I could have done these things. So that type of take
Hindsight's
risk.
2020.
Exactly. That type of advice outside the classroom is what I would say.
That's awesome.
Inside the classroom, I would say that try to develop an interest in the classes in which you're taking, even if it has to be sort of artificial, because not only will you enjoy the class 10 times more, but your grade will significantly improve if you do that.
That's some really good advice. That's
Like, I was never a science guy. I just not interested in biology, that stuff.
Mhm.
But I had to take like honors biology and then IB biology in my junior year of high school.
right.
And I remember thinking, I was like, well, I'm just going to have to force myself to be interested in this. Just find anything you can relate biology to something I'm interested in. So like sports, comedy, music, whatever. I would just try and find something that I could link, and then I would be interested in that subject. Like, I remember, here's the story. Like, we were learning about the heart, right? And I remember reading that there was an NFL player, Ryan Clark, who had a certain heart condition where if he played in, like, he couldn't play at Denver because the altitude is so high.
Right.
So he wouldn't be, like, those games you couldn't
They
travel.
kept him out. Right.
Exactly. And
I
he was
remember that. I totally remember that.
He was a very good safety, like,
Right.
for the Steelers, a
Right.
great player. And I remember, like, once I made that connection, I was interested in, like, arteries and, like,
How it
the
works.
valve and all that stuff.
The ventricle and all
And
that
I
stuff.
and I got a good grade on that test, and, like, that's just what I did for classes that I didn't enjoy. Pretty
And
much.
that's kind of what I tell kids all the time. Find some connection. And once you do, all of a sudden, all those barriers, all those things that are in the way just fall by the wayside because you found something interesting. Because the kids are like, how come you like social studies so much? I'm like, because it's a cool story if it's told by the right person. But if it's not, it's snooze fest. It's terrible.
I'd say the IB program at Atlantic as a whole was very difficult.
I can imagine. Anything with the two letters capitalized I and B has to
Yeah.
be very difficult.
That was probably the most
International Baccalaureate, for those of you
yeah,
that don't know what
very
that stands
very
for.
regal name.
Yes, yes, yes.
That was probably the most challenging experience I've had, but more specifically in IB, you'd have to do like these things called internal assessments. So
Oh, wow.
you have to take 6 IB classes, right? So I remember English, calculus, economics, anthropology, Spanish, and one more, which I can't remember. But you have to do these like long, like 5,000, 6,000 word like papers, reports on each of these topics, right?
Wow.
So I would have to write like 5,000 words on an economic topic or an
So
anthropological topic.
could you tell us approximately how many pages that would be?
Oof.
4 or
If you
5?
No, more than that.
10?
I'd say like 15 to 16.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're just trying to get a relative idea. Thank you.
Yeah, like they were long papers. So
That is long.
for economics and English and Spanish, like I was able to, it's just essays, right? Like you do that all the time.
Right. You
But I
threw
remember
that out without a problem. Right.
Yeah, but I remember for calculus, I've never been a math guy, right? Calculus, like to write 15 pages on calculus,
No, that's
for
impossible.
me, that was like, wow, like how am I going to do this? But again, I did what I previously mentioned. I found a topic in calculus called regression to the mean, where like basically outlying numbers and data tend to fall back to the average
Right.
over a long period of time.
Over
That's just
time.
like the basic thing of it. So I remember I found that, and I found a way to write about that in the context of sports.
Interesting.
So once I did that, I was able to, I mean, it was still tough, but I was able to work out, 12, 13, 14 pages on this topic. And I passed at the end of the day, which is all I wanted.
Right.
Because I knew I would get A's in the other classes. It would balance out. So I just needed to pass in this.
But once again, you went to that spot where you found something that related to sports through that. You just had to do the research and spend time to find it.
And
that's really interesting.
Another thing I would say is like what helped me, keep motivated and keep pushing is I was like, they've had the IB program for 50, 60 years, right?
Right. It's been around a long time.
Thousands of kids have done this. So why can't I do it as well, right? It may seem impossible when you're just, it's like you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, I have to write 15 pages. But thousands of other kids have done it. And there's no reason why any of them are inherently smarter than you. So you should be able to do it as well.
Wow, that's really introspective. That's an amazing thought. That's
incredible. So that's what I used to keep pushing. I was like, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? We're the same. Incredible. We went to the same school.
That's incredible. Wow. So now going along with the difficulties, what did you do? Because you said you weren't the party kind of guy. You didn't get your driver's license until you're 18.
Yeah.
What did Sumeet do to unwind? Are you just like all about what?
I mean, I've been a sports fan forever. So I would actually, I'd say another advice I can just give generally, if you can plan out your week in high school in terms of like, I'm going to do this on this day, and work it out, your life will be 10 times easier.
I'm sorry, is that the word organization?
Yes, organization, yes.
So that seems to be a like the dodo bird or the dinosaur for middle school kids. They think, I'm going to wait until the last minute, put in marginal amount of work and get an A. And they don't understand why that doesn't happen.
You need a planner or an agenda or something in high school. Like you will not be. So what I would do is I would organize my week around the sports games which I wanted to watch. So for example, I watch a lot of soccer, and soccer is on during the week, during at like odd times because it's in Europe, right? So the time difference is weird.
5, 6, 7 hours ahead of us. So
so
you're in school, so you can't watch the game.
Yeah. So like my high school would end at 2:45, right? And let's say there was a game at 3. So I would write in my planner, okay, I'm going to watch this game from 3 to 5, meaning from 5 to like 7, I have to work extra hard to catch up on the stuff I missed during that 2 hours.
Right.
Now, and I would plan it in a way that I was able to, successfully do all my stuff on time, because every Sunday I would set out my plan for the week, and it was pretty easy for me to do
management.
Oh, that is the biggest skill that I learned, especially in high school as well. I will say, because middle school, like you're only 14, 15. You cannot leave if you feel like leaving, right?
Right.
But in high school, like once you're 16, if you get your license, you can leave if you want. No one's going to stop you if you take your car
Right.
and just drive out of the parking lot.
Well, just on the contrary, when you're 16 years old, if you're the school screw up, they can tell you, thank you for coming. You don't need to come to school anymore at 16. That's
Exactly. Yeah. They do, like, they will care a lot less about you in high school than they do in middle school.
That's
That
what
is,
they don't
huge.
understand that. Thank you for saying that. It's so important.
It's even more so in college, but even in high school, like,
Well, college, you're paying for it. So they're like,
Yeah.
whatever, show up, don't, we got your money. It doesn't matter.
yeah. But in high school, it's like, if you don't, anybody that wants to be here in class, they would be here. If you didn't want to be there, you'd probably skip, go get food, sleep in, whatever. So they know, like, hey, if this kid's here, he wants to learn.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That was my high school. That if you didn't want to come, just don't be a nuisance.
Yeah, just don't come to class.
But if you're here, you want to learn. But don't be that kid who's here trying to distract everyone who actually does want to learn. That's
Exactly. Yeah. Because people will not like you if you do that in high school.
That'll be a huge problem, especially in those.
Nobody will be friends with you if you do that.
Especially in those IB, AP, STEM programs, because those are the kids that want to go to the good colleges and they want to do well, and they don't want some Weisenheimer making wisecracks all the time and distracting the teacher so they don't get the information, because otherwise they're spending more time learning on their own.
Yeah.
So since you took IB classes and you were talking biology class and learning about the heart, what would you say was your most challenging experience, and how did you overcome that? What was something that you could look back and go, oh my gosh, this was like the quintessential challenging experience, and how did you finally get to move past it?
I remember studying for the SAT was pretty difficult. I had a baseline score, like, without studying, that I was okay with, but it wasn't going to be enough for me
to get to where you want to go.
To get into, like, because Florida now is like a top 5-6 school now.
Competitive.
Like, in terms of, like, if you take the private schools out of it, right? So like Harvard, all that stuff, right? Florida is like a top 6 school.
Yeah.
So it's no longer like, okay, if you're just a smart high.
Your challenging experience was the SATs and preparing for that?
Just the grind, because I started studying very early, and you're supposed to take it your junior year. That's when you start taking. You can take it earlier if you feel like it, but so I started studying in 9th grade.
Wow.
So I remember all my friends were like, "Dude, what are you doing? We have 2 years," and I was like, "No, I'll just study." Like, I was studying 20 minutes a day, 15, 10 minutes, like nothing. Like everyone has 10 minutes,
but it adds up over time.
When I do that for 2 years, there is no way that somebody in 1 year can catch up to me. It's not possible.
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
Like, so once I did that, I was able to get the score I wanted. Like, I think I want to say like 1450 out of 1600 was my score.
Wow, that's tremendous.
I don't know what the percentile rank of that is, but I know it was like competitive enough.
For sure.
So yeah, like I got that, and I remember my friends didn't. Like, they had much lower scores. Yeah, but they had lower scores.
Yeah, probably in the 1200s. You were probably like 200 points ahead of them because
and
of all the time you studied.
And I got into the school that I wanted, and a lot of them didn't, unfortunately. And
that's, you see, I try to explain that to the kids today, and they don't seem to understand. When I was growing up, if you had great grades, you could still get into those great schools. If you had great SATs, the same thing. Today, you need both. You need
both. Yeah.
And they don't understand that, as well as extracurricular. So basically, again, your work ethic and putting in the time was what helped you to overcome. But this was also something that you were planning on and something that you wanted to do. So it was just a challenge that you were willing to take. It wasn't like it was a challenge that just presented itself. You were like, all right, I'm going to start studying in 9th grade. So by 11th grade, I'm ready for this and I'm going to tackle it. So how many times did you take the SATs?
I took it only twice, actually, because the first time I got a 1400. And
still pretty good.
And I knew I could do better because I had done better on the practice exams.
Yeah.
So I just waited for the one that the school administers. So that's the one everyone takes in the country.
Right.
So I just took that one as well. And then I got the score I wanted, and I figured, okay, this is enough. Like, I think this is enough to get me into the school I want.
That's enough For most people, that's a tremendous score, Sumeet. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That really is. You should be very proud. There are some people who are just gifted in the world of test taking. There are just some people that can figure
that's
out.
true.
They're asking this question. This is the answer that they are looking for. Not necessarily the answer that I think it is, but the answer that they are looking for. And with standardized tests, that's it. But again, let's go back to the beginning. You put in the work. Yeah, it was 10
Yeah.
or 15 minutes a day, but that adds up 7 days a week for 2 or 3 years. Now, all of a sudden, we're talking about a ton of hours. You know, this is a lot of time, overtime. It wasn't just like your friends who said, oh, crap, here are the SATs. I better just, study my heart out every weekend for the next 6 weeks and I'm ready. And obviously they weren't.
And that doesn't even, like, I remember the weeks leading up to the test, I was so relaxed because I knew I had already done the work. Like, I'm prepared as I can be. My friends were not. They were cramming every night studying.
And that's what makes a huge difference. When you're relaxed, it doesn't matter what it is you're doing. It's like you watch the professional athlete. Does the professional athlete look nervous when he's up there?
Yeah, not at all.
Not at all, because this is the 1 millionth time they've done this.
Exactly.
And they're just so used to doing it. I mean, you look at baseball, not everybody hits home runs. You look at soccer, not everybody scores a goal.
Yeah.
But you have your role and you play your sport and you do your job. And as long as you do your job, then hopefully you're going to win.
Exactly.
And in this instance, you won because you did what you needed to do.
I would say it helps to have your goals in mind because I knew in 9th grade, like, that's the school I wanted to go to, University of Florida. So I just Googled, like, okay, average SAT score for University of Florida. And I knew their score was like 1410, right?
Did it go up? Just a question. Did it go up from 9th grade to 12th grade? Had it changed or did it just stay the same?
It went up like 30, 40 points. So I'd say
Okay.
now it's probably 1470-ish.
Oh my gosh, they're really pushing the envelope.
Yeah, it's getting tough. So, like, but I knew, like, okay, if I can get above 1400, I will be safe. I knew that in 9th grade. So, right. So I had that goal in mind, even if it was far away. So I knew, like, what I need to do to reach that score. I mean, if your school's, like, if you want to go to Harvard, right, theirs is like minimum 1580 out of 1600. So, like,
nearly a perfect score. Right.
Exactly. Right. So if you set that goal for yourself in 9th grade, there's no reason why you can't reach it.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be, honestly.
But that's it. You sat down, either put it on a piece of paper or put it in your head, and you said, this is my goal. At the end of high school, I want to get the letter that says, congratulations, you were accepted to the University of Florida.
Yeah.
And you realized what it was that you had to do in order to get there. But that is a tremendous lesson that I hope that these kids listening can learn, is that it wasn't just like Sumeet went his senior year, I need to take the SATs.
Yeah,
and I want
not
to go
even
to the
close.
University of Florida. And, I've been taking all these regular classes for the last 4 years. They'll take me. It's not a problem. My dad is an alumnus. It's no big deal. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. You got to put the work in. And I think no matter how much I tell them, I think once they finally get to high school, that's when it clicks. But that's why I wanted to have guests like yourself come on, talk about their experiences and explain to me how they got there, because it wasn't just like one day you woke up and here you are, University of Florida, and you're an engineering major. It doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
No, without a doubt. So what did you learn about Don Estridge as a school after you left the hallowed halls of Don Estridge?
When I left Don Estridge, I knew I would miss it because, like, the family that you have there is, like, the school spirit there for a middle school is, like, unmatched. I don't think any other middle school has as much spirit as Don Estridge did.
That's good to hear.
Even in terms of high school, like, for Atlantic, right? The IB program and the regular program, like, it was so disconnected. So, like, it didn't even feel like we were at the same school. It was very weird.
How many students went to Atlantic?
So I'd say around 2,000, and about 150, 160 of those were IB.
Oh, okay. Well, it's still a small school because Don Estridge is only 1,250.
Yeah.
And a lot, like Boca High is like 3,500 or something like that.
Yeah, Boca High is pretty big. But I know, like, whoever's going to Boca High, like, that school has a lot of school spirit because I've seen my friends go there and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But when I left Don Estridge, I knew, like, the teachers care so much about you. Like, you won't get that in high school.
Yeah, that changes a lot because they have more students, they have more information and less time to do it.
Yeah. And, like, I just remember, like, I was so like happy and proud that I went to Don Estridge. And I remember like everyone used to say like, "Oh, once a dragon, always a dragon," and I used to
Right.
laugh and I'd be like, "Oh, that's so cringe," whatever.
Right. Right.
But like it's actually so true. Like I still talk to all my friends from middle school and like we have the same like I mean my name is in the gym on like 3 banners, right? Like that will always be there.
That's incredible. Yeah, mine is too, strangely
Yeah.
enough.
So
And
like
that's the
that's
thing.
like I'm always going to be attached to that school like
Right. You're
you
there
know?
forever because your name is on a banner and you'll be there forever. And that's one of the, you're immortalized. Exactly. And that's an
Exactly. Like
incredible feeling.
it feels nice like if I ever go to Mr. Bender's classroom, like I know he'll have a picture of me in his
Without
class.
a doubt. I see it all the time.
Like I know
Whenever
I'm
I go
there.
in his room, I'm like, there he is. And that's what helps me to remember the kids because he has all those pictures of all of his teams and the teams that won the championships. And it's important. Were there things that you learned at Don Estridge, but you didn't realize until you got to high school and you're like, whoa, somebody tried to teach me that in middle school. And now I see that it's beneficial to me.
I realize sort of that like who you hang out with sort of determines where you're gonna go in terms of your school success. Like I was always smart, not the right crowd, let's say, in middle school, and I could have been a much better student than I was, but I wasn't. And in high school, I sort of realized like, okay, I need to pick my friends better. Like I hung out with kids who were like, more academically inclined than I was and smarter, right? And they would get like 96s, 97s. So that would make me push myself to get to a 96, to get to a 97. Because
So instead of being the big fish in a little pond, you became the little fish in a big pond
exactly, yeah. And I think that really helped me in high school.
to push you for sure.
Yeah. It just having like a good support system around you and a good set of friends. I think that really helps in high school.
Well, that's awesome because it always takes a minute for you to appreciate what you had now that it's gone because
Oh
you were
yeah,
like,
100%.
oh, I was the big fish. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, crap, these people are running circles around me. And I used to be the top dog.
Yeah, that really like that is a big reason why I became more like studious and focused on my studies because I saw people that I thought were like my level, like surpass me in terms of like grades or like how the teacher likes them and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was like, man, I can't let this happen. Like I need to like I guess it's just the competitiveness that I have from playing sports.
Because your sports competitiveness overlapped into your education.
And I was like, I need to be like number one. I need to go to the top again. And I ended up not like my rank in high school out of like, so there's, I think 600 students in my grade, 500 students, something like that.
Right.
I was ranked, I think 30 to 50, somewhere in that range. Right.
That's still pretty good out of that many people plus taking the IB program.
Yeah. So like I
impressive.
wasn't one. Like I'm not gonna act like I finished as the smartest kid, right? But I was still respectably up there in terms of like my GPA and all that
you
stuff.
got into the college you wanted to. They accepted you without any conditions. So you did what you needed to do. And your ranking really didn't affect that because you were in the range of what they were looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's very impressive and it's very important. So you set out a bunch of goals for yourself, which it seems like you did, and then you were able to check those off all of the list and you were able to go to where it is you are today and moving in the direction that you wanted. Whereas perhaps some of your peers or friends didn't necessarily get to do that. And they're just kind of like, well, this is where I am. This is what I got to do. And you're happy going to school every day because this was your plan. You achieved it. And now you're moving through it to whatever the next phase of this Sumeet journey is. So the last question that I have is, now that you've been gone from Don Estridge for quite a few years, do you remember who Don Estridge was?
If I'm not mistaken, he was one of the lead developers when IBM was starting.
What did he develop?
Oof, let me think.
Come on, dude. It's part of your profession.
I know this is why it's bad. Like I study computer engineering.
I love to ask all of my friends this question, who are computer engineers. And I'm like, do you know who Don Estridge is? And they're like, oh my God, that name sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
I haven't heard it since college. And I'm like, you should know, because without him, you wouldn't have a job. He is supposed to be the father of the personal computer.
Ah, yes, something like that. I knew.
And here's the crazy part. Supposedly, it was invented at our school because our school was an IBM building
Yeah.
before it was the school. So I just love to ask that question because so many people are removed from Don Estridge for so long, and it's just interesting to see if they still remember. And I think it's hilarious that you're going to be an engineer and in these classes, and you're like, oh, I know this. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, Sumeet, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and talking to me. It's been a pleasure going down memory lane with you.
Yeah,
and
I had a lot of fun.
all of the things that you had spoken about. I so greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that you will have opened up the eyes of many, many kids, not just one, which was your original goal. But I'm sure with all the stories and everything that you have told, that it will definitely make a huge difference. So on behalf of myself and the How I Got Here podcast, thank you so much for being on. And I really greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. No problem.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.